This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is June 1st, 2023. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, how are you?
I should be asking you. How are you? It's NBA Finals Day. Yeah, the Miami Heat and the old Denver Nuggets squaring off. I can't believe it. I really can't. I genuinely, I don't know why it caught me off guard, but it did catch me off guard that Boston just completely blew that game.
It's frauds. People want to blame Jason Tatum getting hurt on the first play of the game, and I do think there is something to that. But how many times have we seen a guy roll his ankle, just lace those shoes up a little bit tighter, pull them nice and tight, and get out there? End to end, he was fine. Had some issues, obviously, moving laterally. But man, Jaylen Brown,
yeah,
there's some real question marks there. If I'm the Celtics, there's no way I'm paying that guy 45, 55, eventually 60 million. And not only if I'm the Celtics am I not paying him, I'm not putting the assets together if I'm the Magic that it would take to trade for him and then pay him that amount. I'm kind of all the way out on that. I've never seen a player that is so talented just make awful decision after awful decision, not only in Game 7 but Game 6 as well.
Yeah, and you can look at his field goal attempts, 8 of 23, right? 19 points on 23 shots, not good. Got to the free throw line, shot only 2 free throws, 1 for 9 from the 3-point line. But the craziest, 8 turnovers and only 5 assists. 8 turnovers is inexcusable, but you better have 9, 10, 11 assists if you're going to have that many turnovers. I mean, he had way more than anybody else on the team combined. So that anybody else not named Jaylen Brown had 7 turnovers, and he had 8 himself. So, yeah, we can talk about Tatum, but the biggest thing to me was absolutely Jaylen Brown and his lack of ability to show up in that game.
And a guy second All-NBA that legitimately has issues dribbling against any kind of legitimate point of attack defender.
Yeah.
If you're trading for Jaylen Brown at this point, I want him as the third option offensively for the Magic behind both Paolo and Franz, and I'm not paying a third option on a potential championship team $55, $60 million a year. I think it's a little bit different because the Celtics are the only team that can offer him the Supermax, but even $40, $45 million a year, I'm not paying a guy with his skill set. We saw Paolo and Franz have issues handling pressure this year, taking all of the point guard and bringing the ball up and those types of responsibilities. But Jaylen Brown, you're supposed to be the second best player on a contender, and for real could not put the ball on the floor. That was crazy. But my entire day yesterday talking about Tuesday was ruined because I could not believe that the Celtics did not beat the Heat, and now we have to watch the Heat in an NBA Finals. The silver lining to this is they should be losing in 4 to 5 games to these Nuggets.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean much, I guess, at this point. You're in the playoffs, and the Heat for a majority of the series were 7, 8-point underdogs against Boston. And going into game 1 on tonight, Denver's favored by 9. Well, as we record this at 9 p.m. Wednesday, May 31st. But yeah, listen, the other thing that is the playoffs has made me start to think more about, because obviously we're going to be associating with the Magic with the playoffs moving forward, because we're going to be in the playoffs next year, is looking at the players that fold in the postseason. Jaylen Brown. And I mean, like you said, most of those, not even a passing turnover. He just was trying to dribble to his left. So has made me kind of evaluate like and really want to see our guys in the postseason so that you get to, because I think that the conversation begins and there's more to it, more volume, more sample size when you're talking about Jaylen Brown. If you look at his regular seasons, you'd be like, oh yeah, like absolutely, kind of you'd be a lot higher on Jaylen Brown. But you get to see him in the spotlight on a national stage, and this is what you get, right? And all of a sudden, the value kind of crumbles. So I'm very interested to see, and it's made me think like which Magic players are going to be the ones that rise to the top, and are there going to, because there's going to be, but which players are going to kind of, shrink when the lights are on. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens come postseason and how a postseason run or appearance can kind of shift the vision and the perspective on a certain player or two.
Who do you have? I mean, I know who you have winning the finals, but is it 4 games? Is it 5 games? What does it look like for you?
It's 4. I think it's 4. I mean, listen, Denver against LA looked locked in, and LA didn't play particularly bad. The Heat can't have any bad shooting performances, in my opinion, against Denver. Denver's going to snuff it out. They're going to win the game handily. I just think I'm hoping that we get some close games, but at the same time, I'm not getting fooled by the last, few rounds where I thought the Heat were going to definitely lose. I'm putting my foot down. The Heat are definitely losing to the Denver Nuggets, and I'm going to say that it's in 4. I just think the magic of it all, and I hate to use the word magic in that, ends here. I really can't see it happening, even though I couldn't see it happening before. So maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe the Heat win that series. Maybe we're just haters, but numbers are on our side.
So the Nuggets are basically going to be coming off of like 10 days rest, which can always kind of go one of two ways. You can either be like incredibly rested and look great or be really rusty. Like that's probably gone by like the first half, but I do think there's the potential for that. The Heat, on the other hand, have to be like absolutely dead after that series with the Celtics because you go up 3-0, like I don't care what like the record is, you still go into it like, all right, we need to win this game, and then you don't. And then you're like, all right, it's game 5, we've got to close it out. It's game 6, all right, we can't go back to Boston for game 7, we've got to close it out. And then they just destroy them. But the other question that I have is like the Caleb Martin stuff has to end at some point, right? Like he's such an outlier in that last round. Like I can't see that continuing another round against the Celtics. I'm sorry, against the Nuggets, not the Celtics. I'm still thinking about the Celtics and how they just completely let the nation down and letting the Miami Heat get to the finals. But like the Caleb Martin stuff has to chill at some point, doesn't it?
You would think, and I don't know if it's matchup. I don't know what it is. I don't know if Caleb Martin is just that guy with the lights on him. Maybe this is the other beautiful thing about the postseason. You find, people rise to the occasion and they earn some, like this. He's just building his stock. Like this guy is going to have his next contract really could all point to this postseason run that he in the series he had against Boston. But yeah, you got to think, was it a matchup thing? Was it, what was it? Or is Denver's game plan going, like, he's not going to hide now, right? You got old Michael Malone and his team sitting over there with 10 days rest, writing down notes the whole time about Caleb Martin. What's he doing? What are his tendencies like? Maybe not just in the regular season. What's his tendencies like in the postseason? What's he doing well? What's he capitalizing on? You got a lot of time to study Caleb Martin. I don't want to say he's going to be a non-factor in the finals because he absolutely was one against Boston. But I think Michael Malone is a far better coach than Mazzulla. So I think the adjustments are going to be made. I don't think Caleb Martin's going to be the same player he was against Boston. And Denver in 4.
So help us God. Go Nuggets. All right, we've got a fun episode planned today. We had Richard Stayman of Mavs/Magic Draft. If you're on Twitter, you've probably seen him before. But we talked about the NBA draft as we continue to get closer to the NBA draft. What are we now? Just about 1, 2, 3 weeks out, like from today. will be the NBA draft. So we're obviously looking forward to that. If you haven't heard, the Orlando Magic are having their draft party at Amway that night, June 22nd. It is a Thursday. Doors open at 6:30. It's free to attend, but you do have to reserve your tickets, so be sure to go to orlandomagic.com to do so. And in some other Orlando Magic news, our boy Paolo Banchero has been named one of 4 rookie correspondents for the NBA Finals. So Paolo Banchero, Jalen Williams, Walker Kessler, and Ben Mathurin are all going to be NBA Finals media correspondents throughout the 2023 Finals. You can follow along on the NBA app and NBA social media to see their coverage from the ground. I guess they're just going to be acting as members of the media for the NBA for the next 4 games, as the Miami Heat gets swept by the Nuggets.
Yeah, I think that the only thing I feel like they do this more at like the Super Bowl. Maybe they've been doing correspondence a lot in the past with the NBA. It could be just mixing things up. Isn't what's his name? Guillermo from one of the late night shows.
Jimmy Kimmel show.
Yeah, Guillermo is always, or at least used to be always, part of like a media member and correspondent there for the NBA Finals. Maybe he'll sneak in there. That guy makes me laugh.
Maybe we see Hasbulla at the NBA Finals. I love Hasbulla.
They bring him in. Bring in Hasbulla and Guillermo and Apollo. Just a nice little collab there. It'd be something.
I love that.
That would be something.
All right, before we get to our conversation with Richard Stayman, let's go ahead and shout out our wonderful patrons, the folks that help financially support the show and make everything possible here at the Six Man Show. We do have a brand new patron with one of the coolest names that I've ever seen. Alistair McKenzie joined our rookie tier. Really appreciate your support, Alistair. And we shout out our brand new patrons every episode that we have them. And we shout out our Hall of Fame and Elite tier patrons on every single episode, which I will go ahead and start now with the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, normal Magic player history, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, The Distract, Donkey Punch Dave, Paolo and Franz's Warmth, Pierre A, Nostalgia and M&M's, Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Drum, Danimal, Dutto 15, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Eric Lopez, Fuchsia, Juan Giraldo, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Hosea Squealin, Destined for Greatness, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, Joe Rothfuss, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior, Barus Halfreakin, Shahin 177, Bolby the Don, Himlo, Ban Himro, RM, Prov 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Spank Too Hard, Soft Taco, Jesse, Johnny B, Fuego Nando, Victor Cologne, Phantom Wolf 72, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Austin Opal, Only Franz, Maria, Keith Wallace, and Fritz. Again, thank you to our Hall of Fame and Elite tier patrons and all of our patrons. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/The Six Man Show. Now, Luke, let's get into the interview with Richard Stayman. Okay, Magic fans, you are all in for a treat as we are joined by a very special guest. We're joined by Richard Stayman from Mavs/Magic Draft. Probably follow him on Twitter. If you don't, you need to. An expert, in my opinion, on all things NBA draft. I mean, it's in the Twitter name, for goodness sake. So, Rich, what's going on, man? How are you? And thanks for joining the show.
Hey, it's great to be on here. I know we were talking off air. It's been a minute. We've known each other, interacted a bunch. I think we've even DM'd and everything, but never talked like face to face like this. So I'm really excited to talk draft with y'all.
And Rich just let us know he was doing a little hooping before we recorded, and you're near Dallas, right?
Yep.
And was playing pickup with none other than our Fazan Amer.
Yeah,
and Fazan is kind of nice. It sounds like
he has climbed up my board. He's considered now for the 11th pick, so I can give a full scouting report.
He's gonna love this.
He's giving Kobe Buffkin a run for his money.
Let's hear it. I want to hear the Fazan scouting report. Let's hear that.
Yeah. So he walked in. He was a little bit behind me. I got to warming up first. For context, I am just a shooter. So anytime I see anybody put the ball on the floor, I'm impressed. But like he had one play where I guess I'll get to the scouting report. He's a slasher, rebounder, defender. He loves it. I'd say I'm a better shooter, but that's just probably confidence speaking. He's a good shooter too. But he had one play where it was a loose ball. He gets it, picks it up, gets one guy missing. He goes behind the back, gets the second guy, does a spin, and gets the third and puts it up. It was so nasty, and it was through three. Pretty like the competition was good. It wasn't like we were playing kids or something. So he can play, he can hoop.
Oh, he's gonna love this segment. He'll be texting us by 8 a.m. guaranteed.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the draft. So as we talked off air, we kind of want to get into some prospects with you that we haven't really had the ability or the opportunity to talk about on the pod just yet. But before that, I want to ask you, like, how do you think the Magic should be approaching this draft specifically?
Yeah, it's a hard question because I feel like no team in the lottery has a harder upside, like really just evaluation, right, with their roster than Orlando, because they have a former number one pick. They've been kind of rebuilding. This is year 2.5, kind of, because 21 doesn't really count, but they still got like an absolute lottery ticket that night on draft night. So they're in this weird position. They have most of their stuff, but they really need to find like some key role players. But at the same time, they probably need to consolidate the roster. So they're in a weird conundrum. I think ultimately they should pick at one of 6 or 11. And I'm going to be honest, I would trade out of 6 entirely. Maybe you can move back, but to save roster space and maybe get some more assets to trade for somebody, I would move out of 6 entirely and be happy at 11. I'm more comfortable in knowing I would get a surefire NBA player it's got the floor ceiling combination almost better than at 11 than at 6, because to me, there's too much boomer bust at 6.
That's interesting. That's so we've been hearing a lot, and what I have definitely been saying is I don't want to keep both. I want to, get rid of one solely for really my reasoning different than yours. My reasoning, well, you said consolidate, which is kind of the same reasoning, but as far as like the boomer bust, I really hadn't thought about where the boomer bust prospects lie more. And so that's super interesting to hear, trade out of 6. What do you think 6 could hold value of? We're talking about who is there and who we hear all the time between, Oscar Thompson, Taylor Hendricks, Jarris Walker. Like, what kind of value do you think 6 holds and could maybe get this team asset wise?
Yeah, I think just in general, you could, if you moved out of 6 entirely, I mean, the Magic already have 2 picks in 2025, which looks really strong. 2024 does not, so I would prefer not to have those picks, but it's easier to get year after year, just keep moving back one than go, hey, we want 2025, because other teams know this, right? Like, it's easier, and also it handicaps teams more to trade deeper in the future. So I think for me, you get a couple future picks, maybe a player in there too, but I mean, several future picks. Obviously, the Magic don't value second round picks. Like, I'd be shocked if they pick at 36. Honestly, in the second round entirely. Like, I can count on one hand how many Magic players have been picked in the second round since this front office took over in, I think, 2017. And I think you would have to just be able to, like, Oklahoma City, right? They're the perfect example. They could probably keep 12 and just, they have 4, I think, 2024 first round picks. You could probably just take those and call it a day.
What prospects do you think are in that range that you would label sort of boom or bust?
Yeah, I think for starters, I mean, Cam Whitmore really fits that bill. I think he's got a lot of red flags on him. That worries me. I would also say the Thompson twins. I mean, they're textbook boomer bust. I think Asar has a little bit more floor in that he's just an elite defender, but I don't see the upside there that much. I don't think he's like a primary guard. I don't think he puts enough pressure on the rim. That's what worries me. And if you're not taking those, yeah, Taylor Hendricks and Jarris Walker are good ceiling raisers, but they're not. I don't know if they're going to be like, I have them as my fifth and sixth best players, but they're not like your average 5th or 6th. Like, I think the 11th best player is a lot stronger of an 11th, like compared to the average 11th best player than the average 6th, if that makes sense.
So that leads into kind of one of the questions I want to ask you, Rich, which is your outlook on this draft as a whole. Like, do you see this as not a strong draft class, or what's your opinion on the draft class?
I go back and forth. I think the top 4 is really good. I think you have 4 franchise changing, really 3.5. I think Brandon Miller could be Brandon Miller, could be a role playing like game changer. Like, he's not your average role player, but he is somebody that's going to change the game on the wings. So I think those top 4 are pretty much like, if you got them, the outlook of your franchise is drastically changing. So for me, I think the top 4 is good. And then it goes to 5 to 11, I have just like in this very mediocre tier compared to their position. And then after that, like 12 to really the rest of the draft, I think it's pretty good. So there's like a little bit of that area where I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to be, it's so much risk is what scares me. That's really how I see it, is there's a little gap, but for the most part, it's a strong class.
Yeah, so gap there like 5 through 11, but you feel like the rest of the lottery and maybe even like the first round there is much stronger than like a typical draft would be.
Yes, exactly.
So your Mavs / Magic draft, and the Mavs hold that pick at 10 right now. We're talking about the Magic potentially trading out of 6. Obviously, what the Magic are able to do at 11 is really going to depend on what the Mavs do or do not do at 10. What is your current feeling on the Mavs keeping that pick? Do they trade it? And if they do keep it, what prospects do you think they may be looking to take at 10?
Yeah, they're, in my opinion, if they don't get Jarris Walker or Taylor Hendricks, I think they're trading out. Like those are their probably dream guys. So I'd be shocked if they keep the pick in general. Honestly, even if one of them's there, they're in a position where they're so asset deprived. I mean, they're probably bottom 10, and I mean, definitely bottom 10 in terms of future assets owned. They have, I think, 1 second round pick to trade, and they can only trade kind of, I think, 1 first round pick because of the weird protections and stuff on the pick that how they have number 10. So for me, I think they've got to move out. I think there's a very, very slim chance they keep the pick. Again, unless it's like they're in love with Taylor Hendricks or Jarris Walker, I can't see it.
There's an episode recently. You are one of the co-hosts, right, of Locked On NBA Big Board, and you had an episode where you were talking a little bit about Kobe Buffkin. As far as Kobe Buffkin goes, I feel like you might be higher on him than some others would say, right? I mean, in your mock draft that you have on your website at mavsdraft.com, you do have Kobe Buffkin going 10th to Dallas. But just a little bit about Kobe Buffkin, why you're maybe higher on him than others.
Yeah, so he's a sophomore that is still 19 years old. He is 6'5". He has an ideal frame for a combo guard, 6'5", 6'8" wingspan. He needs to add some strength, sure, but there's really no notable flaws. He's kind of a point guard. He played for the first time in his life point guard full time. I mean, even in high school, he was kind of a shooting guard. He didn't have much point guard responsibilities, and he looked pretty good at it. Like, you would not, if you hadn't been told that it was his first time ever for a full season running point guard, you'd think like, okay, he's like an okay point guard, but like when you contextualize it, there's a lot to like there. The shooting is legit. I mean, the free throw percentage is strong at 85%, 35.5% from 3. So like those two numbers go hand in hand. He finishes well at the rim, so 3-level scorer, good motor. His defense is really strong. He has great timing and anticipation. Again, his motor helps him a lot on both ends. He can be a rebounder. So for me, there's really nothing wrong that he does. Like, the point guard skills will need to take a jump to really translate, but his floor is insanely high. And honestly, when you're that young and you have that many abilities, I think he's got really hidden upside as well.
Going back to the Magic, currently owning picks 6 and 11, 2 scenarios for you. The Magic keep 6 and 11, or they get rid of 6, they keep 11. In those scenarios, who do you like for the Magic at 6 and 11 if they keep both of those picks? And then who do you like for the Magic at 11 if they move on from 6?
Yeah, I mean, I think 11 is going to be the same answer. But for me, my dream draft is they get shooting, right? And hopefully guys that have more upside than just shooting. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say just Grady Dick, although for everyone I know, there's a lot of people who are torn on him because right now he is kind of just a shooter. But it is important to know he's got a great feel for the game and these high IQ, like just really intelligent on the floor, great fundamentals. Those kind of shooters at his size, they don't fail. So like he's going to stick. My issue is I just want someone with more upside. So at 6, I would take Taylor Hendricks. You get the shooting and the defense, even more versatility in the front court. And then at 11, you take Jordan Hawkins. Jordan Hawkins has a lot of hidden defensive upside. I think as he gets stronger, he's going to be very good defensively. So for me, I think you get two-way shooters. Like, what's there not to like?
Now, as far as you actually tweeted out something today, Rich, and it was essentially the report was Jett Howard going to be working out for the Orlando Magic on Saturday as part of a pre-draft workout. In talking about this, I find it interesting, right? On one hand, he's a Michigan guy. We know how that goes, right? on another hand, you've got him at as low as 30, right, in your mock draft. So for Jet, what do you think? Do you think that the Magic might just be obviously doing their due diligence, but the Magic pick at 36? So is there a chance that they are maybe gunning for Jet Howard eventually if he shows enough in this workout, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think for sure they're bringing in every first round prospect, right? That's not like Victor Wembanyama and Scoot probably, but even then they might, because they might trade up for all we know. So part of it is due diligence. I know for a fact I wasn't allowed to say who else was in it because the Magic are very tight lipped. But I do know that they brought in this guy's not like a high profile player, but they brought in a defensive specialist to go against him. So I do think it could be something where, hey, we like what we see. The reason I had him 30 actually was the intel just isn't that strong. Like there's a lot of stuff he played for his dad, accountability, shot selection, lack of defense. There's a lot not to like there. But when you're the Magic, you need shooting. You can probably forgive it. And to me, I'll just speak kind of my opinion on it. I wouldn't take him. We saw what happened with Caleb Houston. I think he struggled a lot when his shot wasn't falling. And I think the exact same thing would happen with Jet Howard. The difference is Jet can hit tougher shots. He can do handoff just right into it. But for me, I think that's where I'm at is I think they're doing it for due diligence. I prefer someone else, but if they like him, I'd trust what they see.
Who are some of the prospects in this draft that you feel like are maybe going a bit under the radar, that maybe not as high as 11, but could go like in the later part of the lottery?
Jalen Hood-Schifino. Well, actually, not anymore. ESPN just mocked him to 9 out of absolutely nowhere. So he was my answer, and now I have to really rework that one. I'd say if everyone's healthy, Dariq Whitehead could really sneak up there. He's somebody who I have a lottery grade on. The foot injury is kind of concerning. It's not my job to study and do that. Or, that's every NBA team's job. I'm just guessing. But if he's healthy, I mean, he's the top 15 prospect easily in this class. I'd love him if you can trade back to like 20-something. I think he'd be great. But maybe Leonard Miller. He kind of fits what the Magic look for. If they don't go forward at 6 or they just punt the pick entirely, Leonard Miller could be somebody they target. Like he may not shoot ever, but it hasn't stopped them from drafting forwards with his abilities in the past.
Another topic that Jonathan and I have talked about, we talked about it as recent as our last episode, is the fact that the Magic could benefit from getting a backup big. A guy, whether that, kind of Jonathan's point was moving on from a Mo Wagner, or not moving on, but moving him to the third, right? The third option, right? There at center. So the guy that I inevitably want to ask you about, because we haven't really talked much about him at all, is Lively. What do you think about Lively as a big and just, all encompassing, and his fit maybe on this Magic roster, if that came to it at 11?
Yeah, I liked Lively a ton in the preseason. He was somebody who I had as my number 3 player behind Scoot and Wembanyama preseason. It's not the case anymore, so I want to preface that with this. But I think my issue is how often, like, if you have to be patient with him. Can the Magic be patient with him? They're trying to make the playoffs next year. So maybe, like, if you're Detroit, you can be patient with him. They have a lot of leeway. They're not going to be in the playoffs next year. They might try and do what the Magic did this year, but they can afford a 1-year kind of learning curve. Can the Magic do that? Hard to say. At the end of the day, like, he was good in college, but he averaged 5 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game, 2.5 blocks, which is good. But if you're doing that in college, you're not going to be able to score much in the NBA. So for me, I think the defense is good. Some of that stuff was exaggerated at Duke, where they let him camp out in the paint a lot more. A big thing people miss with centers is in college, there's no such thing as defensive 3 in the key. You can sit there the entire 30 seconds, no penalty. In the NBA, obviously 3 seconds max, in theory, depending on who you are. But I think for Lively, it's going to be how quick can he adjust to the NBA tempo. He's got some upside outside of the rim, but I think his floor is probably just a 2-way interior presence, right? Where he's dunking everything and he's blocking a lot of shots, deterring shots at the rim. So in theory, he could be a backup big. I don't know what the true upside is and how attainable it is. He's really hard to evaluate in that regard.
Kind of shifting away from the draft a little bit, your Mavs/Magic draft, can you just talk a little bit for our listeners about how that came to be?
Well, so when I was 5 years old, or let's rewind. I was born in Orlando, and then when I was 5 years old, I moved to Dallas, and mind you, my first life memory was a game in, I think, early 1999 or late 1998 of Penny Hardaway and the Magic. And I remember parts of it. I could not tell you what happened in the game, but I have been able to like put two and two together, find the game. So I was a Magic fan first, for what it's worth. And I moved to Dallas, and being the indecisive person I am, my parents jokingly asked me, like, so who are you going to be a fan of? Who do you want to win? Like, if they play? And I was like, both. And I just completely adopted that mentality for my entire life. So it's been a blessing and a curse. I got to see Dirk and Dwight Howard, overlap their careers and their peaks parts of it. That was fun. The 2000s scared me, man. I thought that they were going to play in the finals, and I don't know what I would have done. So that's a little bit of the backstory there.
I was just going to ask you, Mavs Magic Finals. You have to pick one.
No.
Okay.
I refuse.
So you don't have you're very passionate, obviously, about both teams, but you said you refuse. But listen, when the Magic and the Mavs play in a regular season game, are you just cheering the whole time? Are you like regretting the whole time? Like, what are your emotions like during a game?
You know, the best one I can show as an example was I was at Jonathan Isaac's game where he should have had a 5x5 in Dallas, but they counted a steal as like they gave it to somebody else, as then he had 4 steals. And I was pissed. That was all I cared about. So I get caught up like in the individual stuff more. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, they won or they lost. So that's kind of where I am. I go like more individual, and yeah, I am cheering the whole way. Like that's really, if I'm at the game, I'm like, yeah, unless it's like something atrocious. Like when Mo Wagner and Luka got into it, I was very much like just like, I don't know what to do. Like this is really
like watching
awkward
your kids
for me.
fight.
Yeah.
So the individual performance is kind of where I wanted to go next. What are some of your like personal Magic agendas? Like what are some things about the Magic that you deeply hold to be true and will fight for?
First of all, Dwight Howard should have been MVP in 2011.
Yeah.
That was an obvious one. I know I'm absolutely missing one. I will never forgive Courtney Lee, even though he was good with the Mavs. That one's on my bucket. That one's not on my bucket. That's on my just forever. I will go to the grave remembering that game. And then, and then also speaking of that finals, when Jameer Nelson came in after the injury, Rafer Alston was doing so well. Like that is like for this. Actually, it's really relevant to this year. I think when Tyler Hero is coming back, mind you, a lot of people are like, I think hearing that and be like, you're not comparing those two, but Jameer Nelson was an all-star. So like, granted, one of the weakest all-stars ever, but still an all-star. I do think stuff like that. I actually been talking about that all week because of like, I feel like there's actually some similarity if Tyler Hero comes back. So those are like 3 of the big ones. I was raised on, I'm not even going to say it, or I didn't want to say it, but I'm going to do it. Nick Anderson, my dad, that was the first basketball name I think I can truly remember because for years he would just talk about how awful that was. So it's, and then like when I watch the Braves, right, they got a pitcher, Nick Anderson, it's just triggering.
We're trying to do our best to change the narrative around Nick Anderson from just being those 4 free throws, because he was so much more of a player than that, and he really was, you could argue, is never the same after that. And for goodness sake, he's the franchise leader in games played. Like we need to give Nick Anderson a little bit more respect than that. It's not maybe his fault that they lost game 1. It is not his fault that they were completely swept.
Yeah, dude, it's just an all-time thing where I have buddies that they've always messed with me for being a Magic fan, and just my whole life, man. That's all I've heard is Nick Anderson, and like it's horrible.
So I have a question about the future outlook of this team, Rich, and what your stance is on a certain topic, which is the young core of this team. Who do you say and classify as the young core and guys that you would really struggle to part ways with as a Magic fan, really?
Well, Cole Anthony was my guy in 2020, so I feel like he has to be on that. Also, though, like Cole Anthony has very much made real improvements to be somebody who at a minimum could be a 6 man of the year candidate. I mean, all the shooting numbers, I actually just tweeted it out earlier this week. His catch and shoot numbers were a career high, and it was very good. It wasn't just like it was, oh, he finally hit average. He was like legitimately good. He was efficient this year. He can hit off the dribble shots. Like there's a lot to like. There's so much hidden upside, I think, with him playing next to Paolo, especially as more guys start hitting threes. I like Wendell. Really, I like basically the top 3 guys plus plus Cole Anthony are my guys. I love Paolo, Franz, and Wendell. I don't want to part with them. If the right price came for Wendell, I think I would do it. And really, from anyone down, I would probably do the same. I will say with Jalen Suggs, a lot of people are obviously quicker to dismiss him because inefficiency, whatever. But I really feel like when you look at these title teams, and obviously we just saw Boston back-to-back years, make the finals and conference finals. Marcus Smart is a huge reason of that. I don't see any reason why Jalen Suggs can't be that. Like Marcus Smart had a little bit better start of his career. He's also older. But I think that's really the path he's coming into. A kind of a point guard. He plays combo guard. He's not a true point guard. Lights out defender. Inefficient, or not inefficient, just streaky shooter that eventually grows into some consistency. I think that's somebody who could really be a title-raising piece for your team. Like, you need that guy.
I think if he didn't make such an improvement in the three-point shooting from last year to this year, I would feel a little bit differently. But how can you look at a guy who makes a 10% improvement in 1 year and be like, oh, that guy can never be a consistent shooter?
Yeah. And I don't think that, like, for the record, I don't think he's one of those guys that'll never be it because, like, the free throw percentage granted, it's not as high as you'd want, but even in college, like, it was fine. And I think it's a win, not if. For him, the game still hasn't slowed down. Hitting practice threes is a lot different than hitting in-game threes in the flow of a very fast game. It just takes longer for some guys. I think I'm a little bit lower on his upside, but Marcus Smart upside is really good. That's still a top 10 player from the draft.
What's your prediction for the Magic next season?
I'm glad you asked. Nobody has asked me this, and I've been dying to get this take off my chest.
All right,
I think they're not even in the play, and I think they're 6 seed. Like, I think they're that good. You don't make the jump they made. I really think they're going to consolidate. This is obviously before any changes and expecting change. I think they could get somebody really good with the assets they have, the players, the picks, anything. I think they can do a lot of damage. They have some of the best, like most positive players of young players in the league on rookie contracts. Like, they've got so much. They're ahead of an average team in their stage. They're much more ahead of that like route, I guess, than your average team. And I'm big on it. I think they're going to take advantage of injuries as long as they stay healthy. I think a lot's going to come together this year.
Last thing that we'll ask you, and we'll kind of steer this back towards the draft before we wrap everything up here. You were at the Combine this year. For people that have never been to the Combine, obviously we know there's measurements, there's drills that they go through, but just speak a little bit to like the experience that the players go through, and then if there's any prospects that really stood out to you at the Combine.
Yeah, so generally what it's like for them is they get in there the Monday. They do their measurements, they do their testing, all that. Not everyone does. All the clutch guys did nothing. They showed up and said hi, and they interviewed a little bit. That was it. Same with the Thompson twins measured, but a lot of them don't do all of it, testing, measurement, and everything. In interviews, most of them do 2 of 3 or 1 of 3, especially the top guys. Most of the second round guys are the ones doing that. That changes next year, though, where everyone, if you're there, you've got to do like the whole 9 yards. For me, I think one thing a lot of people don't value of the Combine, it's not just what you see on TV. There's so many, like, this is the first time since the All-Star break where all the GMs are in one area. I saw every GM at some point all throughout the weekend. I saw owners. I saw Steve Ballmer was right next to me. Like, there's a lot of power in that building. All the coaches are there. So there's a lot going on. That's why things change when you start seeing these narrative change, like ESPN put out their mock. Like, it's real. They're talking to these people and they're getting the change because people are coming together. They're in the same room for the same time. They're starting to see these players for the first time. So a lot changes. As for standouts, I really liked Brandon Podziemski, out of Santa Clara, sophomore. Might as well be treated as a freshman because he didn't get a fair chance at Illinois. I also really like if the Magic were, I actually think this guy's going to get drafted, but if the Magic were to get a shooter as an undrafted free agent, Seth Lundy is that guy. Like, he's a 6'5", consistent shooter, hard worker, very good leader at Penn State. And one last one, this is the guy I think will help this stock the most, is Olivier Maxence Prosper out of Marquette. He had been inching towards a better shooter year by year, but this Combine and everything since, he's just been killing his workouts, like in terms of jump shooting. He's looked like a very legitimately improved shooter. So he's somebody who might have gotten himself first round, which in turn bumps guys who have been traditionally at that back into the first round, early second, into the Magic's 36 range.
Rich, we really appreciate you taking the time in and talking some Orlando Magic with us, and more importantly, this time of year, the draft. Let all the listeners and viewers know where they can find your work.
Yeah, pretty much anything on at Mavs Draft on Twitter. I post everything I do. I'm also growing my Instagram NBA draft film. I'm able to go into more depth there because character limits and stuff. So those are the two spots. Anything on my site as well. Scouting reports of every top 100 prospect, mock drafts, community mocks, things like that.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate your time, and more importantly, we appreciate and look forward to your emotional crisis when the Magic play the Mavs in the finals.
Man, 2025 is going to be rough.
It is. Let's go Magic. All right, man. Thanks so much for joining the show. Another thank you to our buddy Richard Stayman. Again, you can follow him on Twitter, Mavs/Magic Draft. Always good talking to him, Luke, and it's good to get different perspectives on these prospects. Like, you talked about it with our interview with Keandre. Like, your opinion of these players is always like the last video that you watch. And I find that being the case, like, my opinion is like the last conversation that we had. So really insightful stuff from Rich. And I'm just ready for the draft, man.
Yeah, it'll be good. And I do feel like the one thing that's tricky about those conversations with people who are draft experts, really for lack of a better term, is you get into a mode of, okay, I need to ask all of my questions. I need to ask them all. He's going to answer something, and I'm just going to go right into my next question. It's very hard to be conversational in those type of appearances, podcast appearances, because you just want to know everything, and you just want to absorb everything you can and hear what they have to say. You're going to take it as gospel 9 times out of 10 because, like you said, it's the last conversation. It's the last piece of content that you see or read. That's what you're going to do. So, we'll see how it shakes out and what our opinions are closer to the draft. But really great that, Rich came on. We were able to make it happen. And just so much knowledge. I don't know what he had in front of him, but I imagine it wasn't a ton, maybe just names, because he was obviously breaking down, like, this is what he does. This is what he lives for. He loves the draft. So I'm sure it's exciting for him, with the Magic having 6 and 11, the Mavs having 10. Just really good to have him on. Hear his perspective on things. Like I said, just the knowledge is pouring out the whole episode. So hope you guys had a good listen on that. Took some notes in your notes app. I know this time of year, I've got my notes app flowing. I got so much stuff that I'm just like typing. I'm pausing podcasts left and right, just typing things of what they're saying, things that I can kind of tuck away and help mold my opinion.
Where are you right now at 6?
At 6, I think I'm Taylor Hendricks still, which is where I've kind of been. I don't know. I like Taylor Hendricks. It was interesting though, right? Like the perspective Rich offered, which was like that 6 spot area to him is the boom or bust, and the 11 is safer, and able to just pick guys that pair, right? You don't have to worry about a star in that instance at all, hitting a home run necessarily, just picking guys that fit. So I thought that was really interesting. But that being said, I'm Hendricks at 6, and I would love Grady at 11 if it happens.
If it doesn't happen, because I'm starting to feel less confident that Grady's there at 11.
Jordan Hawkins.
I'm like laser focused on Jordan Hawkins at 11.
Yeah.
At 6, I kind of want to trade back to like 7 or 8 and just get an additional asset and not feel like I'm reaching for a guy. But just give me Grady Dick and Jordan Hawkins.
Yeah.
Figure everything else out after the fact.
I feel like, was there reports today about the Mavs not wanting Grady Dick, or
not likely to take Dick at 11, or at 10. I think that was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't remember when that was, but I saw that also.
Yeah. So after that, I'm thinking whoever trades into the 10 spot is going to be the team that takes Grady Dick, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think he'll be there at 11. Maybe the Magic trade from 6 to 10. and they go 10 and 11, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. That would be very interesting. There's a lot of options. Magic got a lot of flexibility. I'm not sure what's going to happen.
We're past the point. Like, I know what I like about all of these guys. I'm more so getting to the point now. Like, all right, what are the question marks with each guy?
Yeah. Who has more question marks?
And am I willing to look past that and possibly be patient? Like, Taylor Hendricks looks great. Like, the offensive upside, I don't really think is really there. There's questions about, like, if he's not dunking, like, does he have like the soft touch to finish around the rim? The shooting is there, and like the positional versatility is there defensively, but he's going to have to put on some weight if he's going to be like your small ball 5 or like a backup 5 for you. So me is like, how much time are we willing to wait for that to happen? Or if we're talking about one of the Thompson twins, or we're talking about Cam is the guy. We had this conversation with Rich, and to him, he's like the biggest boom or bust guy out of the group. To me, I don't necessarily see that. Like, if Cam is the pick at 6, I'm like, all right, like I'm good with that. There's a lot that I like about Cam. I know there are question marks, but some of the other guys there, I'm just not sure about. Like, I guess Jarris is another guy that I'm good with at 6, but at the end of the day, I'm like, let's just get the guys that are going to be able to give Paolo and Franz what they need. And I think Grady and Jordan Hawkins do that with their shooting. So even if it's a little bit of a reach at 6, if you're confident that Grady is going to give the Magic like the most from day one and is going to help Paolo and Franz eventually be the best versions of themselves, I'm kind of good with reaching at 6. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it multiple times, but it is very refreshing to not have to worry about hitting that home run. We can just complimentary piece after complimentary piece. That's all you need. And if they turn out to be better than just a great contributor, then you cherry on top. But for me, just get the guys that compliment. And I really think shooting is going to help their games immensely. The Magic's game immensely. Having Paolo and Franz giving the ability to drive and kick. Right now, you just can't really do that as much as you would like to from, first guy on the roster to the last. So just building the shooters around these guys. I really just, that's all I want. I just want shooters. Just build it, and Paolo and Franz will get the rest done.
I don't know if you've seen this TikTok, but I saw it yesterday. It starts like this old woman has like her head like kind of turned, and they're in the bathroom, and they're talking about like pouring peroxide into like the ear. So pours peroxide and the spider comes out. Like new fear unlocked. Like I didn't think that was something that I had to worry about before. I have a new fear that has been unlocked, and it's like Grady Dick goes 7 because the Magic takes somebody else at 6, and then Jordan Hawkins goes 10th. And the Magic finished the draft without either Grady Dick and Jordan Hawkins. I don't think like that is, to me, and we do this every year. We did it with freaking Jabari Smith, and we were wrong last year. But every year I get like super attached to one or two prospects. This year it's Grady Dick, it's Jordan Hawkins, and Cam Whitmore is there as well.
Cam Whitmore. Yeah.
But if somehow we finish this draft without Grady Dick or Jordan Hawkins, like I think I'm gonna be upset.
Gotta have Dick.
That's going to do it for this episode. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show. We will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!